Welcome back to Let's Clone. My name would be Toast, and this isn't going to be an entertaining video at all. I wanted to put together something to help teach data structures, in particular DS grids, because I use them all the time, and I got some questions from you guys asking to break it down. So I've made a little bit of a software demonstration of sorts, and I just wanted to break into that, go through some things about data structures, and yeah, I'm getting redundant. First, let's actually go to the documentations. Good place to start just about every time. Not off to the fastest start, but here we are, data structures. This GameMaker, their documentation is pretty decent. Click through everything, read what you can. But we have grids, lists, maps, queues, stacks, all those. Let me open up a grid and a map. Those are the two that we're going to use the most. Before diving all the way into these, let me fix my mustache. We should first go over a little bit of arrays. If you don't know what arrays are just about every data structure that we use, just in a very linear format. You can think of an array like a, there's so many fucking analogies you could use. What's the best one? Now it's really easy to picture a grid. We all know checkerboards. An array, think of it as just one row or one column of a grid. That's it. It's just an arrangement of information. In different languages, you can do different things with them, and you just put data in them, and then we have the availability to point at whatever part of that grid we want, or that single dimensional array, because a grid is just a two-dimensional array. And yeah, that's an array. I'm sorry, they're pretty simple. They're intimidating, but they're simple. Just read about them, play with them, use them. It's fine. Grids. Hopefully you know arrays, so we can get into grids. Let's do that now. Now, I know better than to try to just read you this whole documentation. You can clearly do that on your own if you have the internet. I just want to highlight a couple things. With grids, we're going to be using mostly, create. We can create a grid of any size we want, and we can fill it with any default value using create and clear. With clear, you can pass the ID to the grid that we're going to play with, and the value you want to set all of the cells to. Destroy, we can talk about width and height. You should already know the width and the height. You shouldn't have to check that unless you're playing with something really dynamic, but we'll deal with that later. Then we're going to be looking at some of the more fun ones that I don't use as often in my projects, but they're really fun and they're super useful. Things like setting, disk, region, shuffle, sort, get, minimum, maximum, sum. We're going to play with all these. So most of these are implemented in this little bit of software. But a grid is just a checkerboard where you can put any bit of information and you're good. What's really nice about DS grids is we have several ways to manipulate the data, but we also have a very easy way with all of these data structures to access or set the data of each cell. So an accessor would be, in this case, this little hashtag or pound symbol. The index of the grid is whatever we create the grid to be called. And by using this pound symbol, we can tell GameMaker that we want to look at this position, either to read it or to set it. It's super nice, so we don't have to actually call the set or the get. We can just pass it those variables. Easy to do. Instead of checkerboards, I forgot that they just give us a picture right here, which is that side for you. This is a grid. If we wanted to look at the very middle position of this grid, in this, we'll just say that the name of the grid was just DS grid, we would do DS grid in brackets accessor, and then since this is going from 0 to 9, you can see that, say we want the 4, 4. So we're just going to 4 for the X, 4 for the Y, and it's going to give us that 2. Whether we're reading or we're setting, that's all we have to do. Data structure, we can look at all of these points. There's 100 cells there. Data structures. So I've only started recently using DS maps in my projects, and I didn't put one into this actual software demonstration, but I wanted to point them out. They're extremely simple. You can think of them as, so for a map, we're going to take that top row of the checkerboard that we're talking about as a one-dimensional array, but instead of calling each of the cells by their order going from 0 to n, we can give that cell a name, so to speak. So you can have a map where there's a score element, and you can keep that's the score, the points. You can have a names element, and so on and so forth. So you can create like a little class, and you can access them with very similar access functions. You just use the name of the map. Question mark is now the accessor for this one, and then the key, score, lives, whatever your your map is holding, and then, yeah, really, really nice way just to have a human readable data structure inside of your system. So a lot of what I'm doing now in my newer game is I have a grid that is storing my map, and that is a grid map as in the map of the world, sorry. I have my data structure grid, and then each of those cells is a map. You can actually nest these data structures pretty well. And then I use that to know everything about my map, to know what blocks I need to render, to know the height and position of all the blocks, and I can do all my collisions through my grid, and then reference the map for the details. If you've tracked that, thank you. I hope you can see this well, but this is our grid. It is just an 18 by 18 grid of all value 0 for the time being. We have different functions, different ways that we can change what's going on, and we'll go over each of them one at a time. Nothing's really labeled well, so it's just kind of for me. The single is selected right now. That means we are on a single target, and we have it set up to add with a value of 1. So anywhere that's 0, if I click, it's going to go up by 1. But I also have the ability to change it to set, in which anything we click will just be set to 1. Very, very simple. Disk is the next option. That's when this comes into play. Disk is, let's say set, let's do it clear. All right. So this is just the size of the disk, obviously. You can make it bigger, and you can make it smaller. I didn't have to do the math to figure out how to make a disk, make a circle. That was in the documentation. I could just look up how to pass the index of my grid, pass the x and the y coordinate, and get a region around that with using the given, I believe, the radius or the diameter. So it can give me access to all of this. I just passed onto my second layer grid that same check, and I just set all those values to 1, and then I highlighted those spaces. So I'm not actually changing the value of my main grid. The secondary grid is just refreshing every frame, letting me know what ones to highlight. That's what's going on here. And then when I click, oops, add, we can set, oh, you're an idiot, Steven. We can set these up and then plop them down. It works so easily. I didn't have to do much to set this up. And you'll see later how this is a practical thing to do and things that we can do with it. But the next option we have is region. So let's set everything to, this one doesn't really matter for in region, sorry. But set everything to 0, and we can just set it to 0. They're fucking great. Like, I'm sure you can all imagine a scenario that you can use any of these for. I'm going to show you a few just in case, but this is great. Let's just fill this up a little bit more and introduce this button. Shuffle. I keep the mirrors, I'm sorry. Shuffle. Neat. Easy. I don't have to do anything. The whole thing's scrambled. Done. Now, if we're on the single and we come to swap, I'll show you how this is going to be very useful later on, but we can take data points and just drop them around. Like, I didn't have to do much at all. You guys can look at the code later. It's fucking simple. It's really, really nice. This is why I like data structures. You can play all you want. You don't have to try much at all. Now, these few functions I don't use very often. We're going to come up to disk. I'm going to check for the minimum. And there is a lot of utility here, and I will play with them more. But it's easy to think of use cases. But right now, everywhere I hover over, we're just hovering over the max. Well, I clicked it, so now I switched to max, minimum, or maximum. And we can easily find values in a space. This could be my map terrain, and I'm looking to see how many enemies are in an area. Bam, done. It's great. You can check the mean, in which, since I'm only finding decimals, it's going to be really hard for me to find one that's an exact 1 or 0 or, well, that was close, but we can get the sum. Again, it would highlight if the sum was the same. Like if we clear everything out, the sum, they're all 0, so it does so much. But let's get into some practical use cases for this. Now let's check out these buttons that I have on the bottom. Let's go over to, well, first if I hit right alt, I'll get rid of the numbers, come over to map, and where we had different numbered blocks, now we have different types of blocks. We have a grass, a water, a sand, and a concrete, whatever it is. And now you can see with the same data structure, I went from having random values to storing different map textures. If I bring this down to set region and say, what was this? Let's get our zeros back. Let's just make a big grass path across here. Look at that. Ones would be the concrete, I think. So let's get some sand up here and some water. And let's hit space. Look at that. We have a map, we have a character that can move around, He's going to walk slow over water because he can't swim, and he can't walk into rocks. We have a map with a character. It's data structures. They're just, use them. Let's try another example. Clear this. I say clear. Let's come over. Let's say we want to make a platformer. These can just be one. We're in a region. Let's, oops. Okay, that's not what I want. There we go. So we got a platform there. We got a platform here. Say we want a platform here. We want to give it a ground because we don't want to be able to fall off the entire map. Let's hit space. Oh, that's lagging a bit. I should probably not be running so many things. And with that same grid, the same grid that we have over here with our values, the same grid that is here, drawing up different things, although let's see if we go to 2, there. Same grid is now over here. Data structures. It's right. Let's try one last one. So here, oh, goodbye. We're going to pretend that this is a regular inventory screen, but it's not. It doesn't have to be that big. Settle these to one region. We have an inventory of apples, but we have, this is on add, inventory of apples and potions. This is just the same stuff we were doing before, but now we have an inventory. We can drag and drop. We can move things around. Oh, and the same data structure. It's the same grid. It just has values. It's also a map. It's with a guy who can collide. It's also a platformer with a kid who can fall. It's a data structure. They're great. Just use them. Just play with them. Open up this project and use them, or find other tutorials. I'm taking a long time just to say that I love data structures. They're probably boring, but fucking use them for everything. Every goddamn game, put in a data structure and it'll be a better game. I almost guarantee it. No money guarantee. Yeah. I'm sorry about this video. There's not too much of a point to it. I don't know. Somebody wanted me to show more about grids, and I could not find a way to make it entertaining, but I really had fun writing that little software, and I don't know, hopefully this just gives you a couple ideas of what to use a data structure for. I'm still kind of settling into this new place, and I still haven't built all of my furniture out of cardboard, and it's all going a little bit slower than I thought, so I wanted to make something, and this is that. My game's coming along, and things are happening. I'm coding a lot. I will be here more. Thank you so much for putting up with me. If you learned anything from this, please let me know so my time wasn't entirely wasted. Peace.